All right, Newsroom Live. I am Dan Bowens, and as we look ahead to 2026, there are a number of high-profile criminal cases that are moving into criminal and critical phases. These are cases that will have big decisions when it comes to grand juries, court cases that could actually begin and move to the trial phases, and some of these investigations that really could play out. We want to take a closer look at some of these cases as we project forward to 2026. So we're going to bring in East Coast correspondent for LA Mag, Lauren Conlin. Thank you so much for joining us here on Newsroom Live, Lauren.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, so one of the biggest cases, obviously, of the last 2 years, really, the last year and a half or so, has been the Luigi Mangione case. We had these pre-trial hearings that were happening toward the end of this year, and now as we look forward to 2026, what do we think is going to happen here?
Well, we know from the hearings that Judge Caro in Luigi Mangione's state case is supposed to make a decision about anything he's going to suppress or not suppress by May. Now, that is a really long time, Dan. I think a lot of us heard May and we were like, are you kidding me? But I guess it all fits since those hearings took about 3 weeks and they were supposed to take 2 days. Additionally, he has another hearing coming up for the federal case in January, and that'll be at the Southern District of New York, where his lawyers are going to argue similarly to what they did in the state court about what they would like suppressed.
And so when we talk about things that could be suppressed, we're talking about any potential evidence that was seized in the backpack at the time of the arrest, any statements that were made. So in January of 2026, those same type of arguments could play out in a federal court here in New York that already happened in Lower Manhattan as well?
Yes, correct. And what happened in state court was actually pretty incredible, Dan. We saw that Luigi Mangione's actual interrogation in Pennsylvania, the interrogation that was done by the NYPD, plus ADA Joel Seidemann, that got thrown out. That got thrown out on a technicality, again, which was pretty shocking. So I think we might see something pretty similar in the federal case as well, but, we'll have to wait and see.
And we don't know anything about when any trial will be set. I mean, after January, the big date will then be May, but we don't know if there's the state case that will come first or the federal case that the trial dates of any of these things at this moment, right?
Correct. And look, we know that Luigi Mangione's attorneys, Karen Agnifilo, she would like the federal case to go first because there's more at stake there. So she doesn't exactly want her strategy to be leaked to the feds because look, the death penalty's on the table. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but clearly he has waived his right to a speedy trial in both jurisdictions.
All right, and so the pretrial hearings for Luigi Mangione sort of wrapped up at the end of this year, 2025. 2026 in early January, we could start to see some of those headlines again. Let's talk about this murder that happened on December 14th, the murder of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle Singer Reiner. Of course, their son, Nick Reiner, arrested and charged in that case. And we could see some things sort of playing out in 2026 as well in this case, right? What do we have that could be on the docket?
Well, Dan, you and I were actually live when Nick Reiner was actually arrested and booked. And what we've seen now between, the date of his arrest is that he obtained a very high profile lawyer, Alan Jackson, most recently known for his work in the Karen Reed case. He was pretty incredible. And Alan Jackson, he told the media, he told the press that there's going to be a continuance of Nick Reiner's arraignment on January 7th. Now, many of us and experts alike have surmised that they are gunning for an NGI plea, a not guilty by reason of insanity, or possible mental competency. Does Nick Reiner know where he is? Does he know what he allegedly did? Does he understand these proceedings? Something is going on where they need an expert to evaluate him in order to enter this type of plea. But Dan, I'm thinking with all this, there might not even be a trial here, the way I think this is going. I truly think that Alan Jackson is gunning for the mental health.
Why do you say that? I mean, okay, so that will be, looks like, I mean, that could be in just over a week, January 7th. and who knows if that'll get delayed, but that's when it's set for now. And you say that could be laying the groundwork for a strategy that may keep the whole thing out of a murder trial, a criminal case. Why do you think that?
That's what I'm thinking at this point, only because I feel like, based on also Romy and Jake's first statement to the press, they said something at the end that made me really think that they love and support their brother regardless of what he allegedly did, which was so horrendous and unspeakable. They just said, we want you to exercise compassion over speculation. And that told me they were the ones that hired Alan Jackson because they want their brother to get a fair trial. And they most likely understand what was happening with Nick behind closed doors, with these mental health issues, with these possible substance abuse issues. We know that he was recently diagnosed with schizophrenia. Doctors were trying to stabilize his medication. Reports that he was also doing non-prescription drugs came out on top of these drugs. I mean, it sounds like there's a big mess going on. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot. And so, again, I can just see Alan Jackson saying, we don't need a murder trial here. We need to get this guy help. I'm not saying I agree with it. I just don't know enough at this point. And
it looks like the LAPD placed a security hold on any additional medical examiner records tied to that case, blocking sort of some of the additional autopsy reports and any more of the specific details that you may get. I mean, just as this part of the legal side of it plays out. So that necessarily is not unexpected.
Right. And I think, when the death certificates were made public, I mean, it was chilling, Dan. The fact that Michelle Reiner was referred to as a widow, her marital status, because Rob Reiner was, this is not the coroner time of death, but the time of death on the death certificate placed him deceased a minute before her.
Interesting.
And, it also said, I believe it was multiple sharp force stab wounds. So it's a heartbreaking thing to read.
And so this case, we may see some movement, pretty soon here as we enter 2026. Another case that, of course, was just sort of captured the attention, not just here in the U.S., but all around the world, was the murder of Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist in Utah. The suspect in that case, Tyler Robinson. And there was some action in his case. Just within the last couple days, the Utah judge there ordered the release of a transcript from a previously closed-door hearing in the prosecution. And of course, he's the man charged with killing conservative activist Charlie Kirk. So this is the Tyler Robinson case. What are we expecting here as we move forward into 2026, Lauren?
Right. Well, this case is so sad, Dan. But for me, it's also very interesting legally. The Utah court systems are interesting in itself because, they will allow cameras, they will allow certain things to be released to the public, but it really is at the discretion of the judge.
Okay.
And so there are a lot of moving parts right now. As you said, there will be a transcript that will be released from October because they are trying to give the public a little bit more transparency here. Also, the defense is trying very, very hard to get the Utah County prosecutors to be removed from the case entirely. So there will be a hearing in January for that. And their reasoning behind that is they're saying one of the prosecutors was actually present at the event where Charlie Kirk died. And there were some text messages sent from this prosecutor to others. And they just feel like this will not give Robinson a fair trial. And there are a lot of, conspiracies attached to this, which, look, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, Dan, but I don't know if you've ever gone through the text messages that AG Jeff Gray released between Tyler Robinson and his trans partner.
Yeah.
But they are so strange to me without knowing how these two speak in real life. And they are included on the actual probable cause. It just seemed so planned and set up, in my opinion, the way that Tyler Robinson said, I had hoped to keep, no evidence left and take this to my grave and look under the keyboard. It just seems so odd that I can't get that out of my head.
It's something that they're going to take a closer look at there. And certainly with this case, because of who Charlie Kirk was, and sort of the high profile nature of the killing itself. There's the video and all this other stuff that goes along with it. I mean, there are a lot of conspiracies that are sort of naturally embedded into this case just in general, right? I mean, that's something that the court and the judge and the prosecutors have to be aware of as they move forward.
100%. I mean, it all goes back to the initial video footage that the FBI was releasing.
Yeah.
I think at one point it showed Robinson jumping with, or basically they said he jumped with the gun in his pocket, which just wouldn't happen. That just is not possible. So I think there are a lot of questions, and that is why the public is like, we are demanding transparency, and the press is demanding transparency. So it's super important.
All right, well, if you're just checking us out here on Newsroom Live, we're talking to East Coast correspondent with LA Mag, Lauren Conlin. One last case that I wanted to discuss with you that really looks like it will have a significant development one way or the other in 2026 is the case of David Anthony Burke, involving David Anthony Burke, better known as the rapper-singer David. There are reports that he could potentially be indicted for murder in the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. That hasn't happened yet. That was a report within TMZ. But what are you hearing about this case that really is, it's been moving very slow from the time when her body was actually discovered to now that no criminal charges sort of in the serious nature have been filed at this point?
Yes, you said it. This is an incredibly slow-moving case, and Los Angeles Magazine has been on this from the start. And we have also confirmed with our independent sources that, yes, a grand jury is one step closer to an indictment, and that most likely will be David Anthony Burke that is indicted. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, duh, it seems obvious. I mean, sure it does, but look, we're still sitting here and he hasn't been indicted yet. And a young girl's body, a 14-year-old girl, was found in the trunk of his Tesla. And look, he has not made a statement. He disappeared from the public eye, canceled his tour, canceled his album, got rid of his Hollywood Hills home. He transferred his Texas homes to his mother, hired a high-powered attorney. I mean, look, if I had to guess, Dan, this kid's got something to hide, in my opinion. Again, what we're hearing now is that a grand jury has been convened. At first, it was reported that it was an investigative grand jury, which cannot issue any charges or an indictment. But now we are hearing that it might not be an investigative grand jury, and it might not even matter. This grand jury will most likely recommend an indictment or charges, but it's going to take some time, as our sources are also saying they have more witnesses in February. And look, at the time that her body was found, the LAPD came out and said, you know, we might not even have a criminal case here, but beyond concealment of a body, which is actually a misdemeanor in California. So that's why they didn't initially arrest anyone, because they could have just released that person right back onto the street.
And so
my heart breaks.
Yep. Yeah, here you have this young girl, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. At this point, no charges that have been filed. Her body was found in the Tesla connected to this rapper-singer David earlier this year. And as you mentioned, I mean, there kind of wasn't a doubt that it was a homicide. It just was unclear about where the charges would come. Is that what you're saying there, or did they they weren't sure if it was a homicide even at first?
At first, correct. I think that a lot of us were speculating, you know, that this was taking so much time. Well, maybe it was a possible OD. Somebody panicked, they hid her body, but then the more that came out, and I go back to, there was basically the LA Times obtained a document that was the LAPD essentially putting a gag order on the medical examiner's office for any death records related to Celeste to be released. They got their hands on this document, and at the top of it, there was a grand jury ID, to which they said, okay, this grand jury ID, when they went to look it up, because in California, grand jury IDs are public, which is crazy. In New York, you know, they're not. Most other states, they're not. They saw the word homicide attached to this grand jury ID. So it was pretty much confirmed at that point that this was, in fact, a homicide investigation. And look, I mean, it seems pretty obvious, but again, I thought somebody would be arrested within 2 weeks, so not that obvious.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed like there would have been some kind of arrest earlier in this case. All right, Lauren Conlin with LA Mag. Where can we find your work? Because you obviously have been tracking all these big cases here.
Thank you so much. Well, you can find my stories on lamag.com, and you can also go to our YouTube channel, which is Los Angeles Magazine Videos, for my daily podcast on all of these cases and more.
And Lauren, one thing I did want to mention, because obviously it's around here, I know I didn't say this to you that we might talk about this one, but Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach suspect, he has a big hearing that's scheduled for January 13th of this year. Of course, he's charged in connection with all those crimes in the Gilgo, Long Island area.
Yes, that is a very complicated and complex case, Dan. I mean, I know that prosecutors out in Long Island are taking their time here, and I don't blame them because they need a conviction and they need this case to be open and shut.
Yep, and this one I know that they've decided that they're going to have a trial consolidation. So the judge ruled that all 7 of those charges will be handled in a single trial, which is significant. All right, Lauren, thank you so much, and we'll be watching your work there with LA Mag. We appreciate it. We'll take a quick break,
Thank you, Dan.
and we'll be right back after this.